Hi, it's Jen back with tea and cookies for two for the month of August. Last month we had our patriotic look, of course, and as we head into August, the temperatures are heating up. Bumblebees are everywhere in my garden as my pumpkins are blooming, the squash is blooming, have blossoms, and they're everywhere. If you're also following our foundation paper piecing series 2, which is the August project here with the bumblebee, I hinted in that video that there just might be a coordinating project. And of course, that's here. These busy bumblebees doing their very important work need to bring this all back to their hive. And so that's the block we'll be working on today. Some simple patchwork with just a pop of applique, of course, prefused and laser cut. Your kit will provide 2 placemats for you with a really fun self-binding technique. And of course, we kicked this series off months ago now. Gosh, I can't even believe how many are on the table. Back with our February project where we're doing patchwork over here, a little bit of a applique here, and then creating our placemat. So if you're just now seeing this video, be sure to head back to the February video where I take that deeper dive into how does all this work, and especially showing you how to do that self-binding technique. So today we'll just be focusing on the patchwork for our beehive and a little bit of that applique. So easy to start off with just 2 rectangles and a brown rectangle, and we sewed those together and pressing those toward the brown. So we're just going to start at the bottom and we'll work our way up. For the next portion of our beehive, we have another rectangle. And in order to get this little bit in the corner of this cream, this is, by the way, a Kimberbell. You can see it's a cream with the bees flying around. It was the perfect fabric for this project. But of course, I love it when I can find that perfect fabric because sometimes it eludes me. Drives me a little crazy as I'm looking for those fabrics. And I just happen to be so fortunate to find this beautiful fabric from Kimberbell. So you'll draw the line from corner to corner, and this is that sew and flip technique that's so easy to do. And I'm just going to put these in each corner and sew directly on that line. I'll do that quickly, almost not even a room for a pin, but I'll put it in anyway, just so nothing moves between here and my sewing machine. At home, it's a much greater distance where my cutting table is and my sewing machine, just because I have limited power outlets at my house. Now we'll press to the outside, and before we trim, I've done that before where I right away trim that, and usually I'm okay, but every now and then I get a little bit cockeyed and I was like, oh, darn it. And once you cut it, it's gone. That looks good because remember, this is still the same size. We're just adding corners so that we can begin to build our beehive. So once you're happy with that, just grab a straight edge and you'll trim your 1/4 inch on both sides, right? And we can press from this side again. So we can start seeing that we now have our bottom here, our next layer. And for our next layer, we did the same thing. We started off with a rectangle. We sew and flip, and then we added a rectangle. So we have the next layer. And for the next one, again, now a shorter rectangle, sew and flip, added a rectangle. So this is our beehive here. Just as you would suspect, right sides together. And I'm going to sew from this side because I want to keep an eye on those seam allowances. If they're on the underside, I can't see them. I can't keep track of them and make sure one's not going to roll back. So because we really need those corners to match up beautifully, I'm going to pin in that corner and I'm going to pin in this corner. Make everything else fit. Pin and pin. Now I like to make trips to the sewing machine economical. So I know we're gonna do this with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Let's look at this one. Same thing. Pin, pin in that corner, make everything else fit. I'll put 2 pins in there. All right, let's go sew that. I'm going to definitely use my seam guide, and I've learned that the far right side of my diagonal seam tape is what I've tested on my machine is where that seam guide belongs. It's a nice guide to always have so I can just quickly line up. That's going to help me not go past that gate. That has been a really important aid for me because, as I've told you many times before, my miss is to sew a generous 1/4 inch. This holds me true to that and doesn't let me go beyond that. Notice how I sewed one section and just kept going. If you're new, that's called chain piecing. If you're an experienced quilter, you already know that term. So let's see how we did. We know that's the bottom of our block, is where our front door is. Our instructions are having us press. I want to press away from that seam. There's a lot of seams at the bottom there. So let's press this way. All right, so let's look at this here. So we know here, that's our next section. And really pressing is to have your block be as flat as it can be. So I could have forced this to press to the bottom, but there's a lot going on, and notice how that seam just wanted to go away from all of this happening. Sometimes there is not really a choice, and other times there can be a choice. So in this instance, since I've already started pressing up, why don't we just continue with the pressing up? I like that idea. All right, so once we have this, once again, corner to corner, no mystery here, right? I'll go ahead and get that sewn, pressed, and we're going to move on actually to our applique. All right, let me move over the sewing machine and get that sewn, and I'll come back. Of course, if you're going to be working on both your placemats really at the same time, you just repeat the same process for your other beehive. So let's check out our beehive. That is so cute. Just like we've been doing, borders come, we have our side borders, right? We know when we place those right side together, as much as we want to sew on this side, don't do it. Just a reminder, pin on this side, pin down there, and it actually fits lovely. That's nice. Fits really well. If there was any type of this being a little bit short or too long, you just make it fit, right? You just kind of gentle little, I wouldn't even say a tug, maybe a little pull. Pin, sew your 1/4 inch seam allowance, same on the other side. And then of course, the same thing for your top and bottom borders. Here, I'll just unpin that. And I would definitely be pressing toward those borders, right? You have all these seams. Your seam allowance is going to be begging to be pressed toward that border. And of course, you'll do that. But what's this bit about the applique, right? That's kind of the punchline, because I got this designed and I thought that's cute, but how do we make it cuter? That's always my goal. So I'll put this over here for just a second. How fun that there's some applique in this one that's not just the scallop. Of course, you absolutely have that as you do in all of them, but this as well, and now it's a layered piece. So inside your pattern here, we've given you pieces 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you have a light box handy and want to be able to pre-assemble that, you can of course bring that out and I'll show you how that works. This is especially handy when you have a much more layered and complicated applique piece. So this is not essential by any means to use a light box, but if you have that resource, use it, right? So we'll just punch out 2 leaves and 1 flower center. And how fun that that's already cut out for you. Already pre-fused and laser cut, as they say. Give a nice firm press. And I'll just remove the backing. We'll do the same with our leaves and our flower center. And I'll show you just a little bit of how to use the light box in combination with the Applique mat. So you can pre-assemble these flower unit and bring it to your beehive as an assembled unit. We would just simply bring this over. The Applique mat is going to be our barrier because we all know that if we lay out these leaves, well, we can see where they go. And we put this down on our flower. We can't iron this down or it's going to iron to our paper. So this is where the Applique mat does its work. We lay this over top. We turn our light box on. Our pieces go down and the Applique mat has a grip to it. An incredible grip. I love it. It helps things to not be bumping and moving as I'm moving around. Down goes our flower, and there I can see my flower center. All right, I'm just going to move that out of the way. Now we bring our Applique mat on a medium heat and just let all of the layers of the glue, remember we've got 4 layers right now, 4 elements that were individual things, and they're merging as one. I leave the iron on a medium setting for 6 to 7 seconds. Then you need time to go ahead and let that cool down. Now, as you can see, this is, like I said, pretty simple shapes. You could do this easily without that. But if you have ever admired a lot of applique quilts and thought, oh, I can't ever do that, you can. It doesn't matter how many shapes, 40, 50, 60, it doesn't matter. You can do that merging of layers so that you're bringing shapes onto the background as merged elements of one. It is absolutely extraordinary. Once everything cools down, this is now a single unit. Isn't that extraordinary? And there's no residue left here whatsoever. So if you love applique and you've been doing it the way I did years ago, where you're bringing pieces onto the background one by one, and you're kind of guessing where do they go, that's old school, where the results are just not what you're seeing on the cover of the package, so they say. This is a great tool to be able to do that. Now, I would put the borders on and just get that part done, but you can see here we've got our flower position, and the reason I would actually wait to put my flower on is I want to make sure that all of my seam allowances have been taken into account, so I know exactly where the top of my block is, which is probably going to be right about there with the seam allowance. But you get the idea that once we iron this down, now we have just a fun little addition to our beehive. And that is why your thread set also has the fuchsia and the green included in that. So be sure to, when you pick up your kit, be sure to pick up that thread set. As you know, finishing the rest of this is just like we've done before. We have our background here. Again, such a pretty fun fabric, perfect for our project, with another little bit of prefused laser cut applique that you'll place on, stitching down with your beautiful kind of aqua teal color. And then you're off to really joining those 2 units And then that self-binding technique that so many people are enjoying, not having to make traditional binding. But again, if you're just joining us for the very first time and you don't know that technique, head back. I have to always refresh myself. If it's been a little while, a month or two, I'm like, I forgot how to do that. And I often reference that video myself, and that's going to be the February project there. So if you haven't subscribed, or maybe your friends haven't subscribed, do that right now. I've already gotten busy with the September project in it. Maybe that one's even my favorite. I say this every time because I put my whole heart in design, wanting to make you happy and just being proud to display your projects. Thanks again for giving me part of your day to show you the tea and cookies project for August. I'll see you soon.